Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Delana. Today I want to take a deep dive into Epstein and some of the biggest questions I think that are being asked right now is one, is it a suicide or was it a murder? And I think that everybody's going back and forth on if it was a murder or a suicide, but everybody's not really looking at the option number 3, which is he still alive? I truly believe that he's still alive. I think that with all his connections that he had through Israel, the Mossad, CIA, everything that he had on his side that could say there has to have been a contingency plan. It had to have been like, if it gets to this point, they have to put you in jail. You can't hide anymore. Put him into jail, and they get a way to get him out and have someone else kind of be the fall guy. So, yeah, one, I think whoever it was murdered. I do think he's still alive. And anyways, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this video. I wanted to do just a deep dive myself to see, what are the possibilities? What is out there? Kind of arguing back and forth either way. So stick with me. I'm just going to break this down. I came up with about 7 or 8 different probabilities, throughout this whole years after his death as to why he might still be alive. So anyways, guys, please like, subscribe, share. Like I said, I really, really don't think that we should stop talking about this. I think that, the blackmail is blackmail, what involves small kids. I think that's what everybody's having a hard time getting their head around. I know there's a lot of dark stuff in the deep state, but when it involves small children, and through my research, I found a few horrific stories, and it just fuels you up to be like, we can't stop talking about this. It's really important that it just doesn't go by the wayside, because if there's no accountability, it's just going to keep going on and on and on, and this will be a never-ending cycle. So anyways, guys, let's start with reason number 1, and that has to do with the metadata. So there were some messages that went back and forth before it was announced that he was even dead. And here's the metadata now, or here, that's showing the timestamps on it. And so that's 4th message down there. I'll blow it up. So this was sent before it was announced that he was even dead. So it says, not saying anything after this, please do not try to dox me. But last night at 4:15 camp, they took him medical in a wheelchair from cuff, but not one triage nurse says they spoke to him. Next thing we know, a trip van shows up. We do not do releases on the weekends unless a judge orders it. And he was actually taken, if this was a Saturday morning. So next thing we know, he's put in a single man cell and hangs himself. But here's the thing, the trip van did not sign in, we did not record the plate number, and a guy in a green dress military outfit was in the back of the van, according to the tower guy who let him through the gate. You guys, I'm shaking right now, but I think they switched him out. So, and in the message down here before, it says the last message is, hey, it just hit the New York Times. So anyways, that message was supposed to have been sent before it was public knowledge that he was even dead. So I thought that was interesting. So the metadata shows the timestamps there. And he was actually, I think it was pronounced dead at 6:30, but it didn't come out till after 8 o'clock in the morning that he had been killed. And another thing, and this brings us to where they took him to the hospital, and the photos of his body in this picture here, which is also very interesting. If you take a quick look, I'll move it to the full screen, but then you have, this was the picture in the New York Post, and the guy that actually took the picture of this, and Candace Owens made a really good point. How did the guy just end up being there? But if you notice, the gurneys in the back there, they're from the FDNY, and that wouldn't be at the hospital. So there's a lot of discrepancies here. They're saying one half was kind of taken from the hospital, one half of the picture was taken from, and they say that these photos, the background and the imaging here in the back was actually from a training video that they had at the FDNY, and not actually like the real footage, which I thought was very interesting. Yeah, like I said, take a note of the orange gurneys in the back. because in this next video with Candace Owens, she shows it as well. So anyways, guys, have a look.
List named William Farrington for the New York Post. He works for the New York Post, creates a file, the metadata became available, for the first 2 photos of Jeffrey Epstein being transported into the hospital where he's going to be pronounced dead just 12 minutes later. So I just want you to understand the amount of luck that this guy had from the New York Post. I lived in New York. You're not just a photojournalist that's just sitting outside to see who's going into a hospital. You get the photo, and it happens to be that you work for the New York Post, which is a whole Israeli op. Don't get me started. The New York Post, the one that did like Candace Owens Anti-Semite of the Year, New York Post, the New York Post that has literal IDF soldiers that write for them. Yeah, that New York Post, their photojournalist, William Farrington, happens to be in the right place at the right time, got tipped off and made it across town, wherever maybe he lived nearby. A lot of things would have had to go right for William Farrington to capture that photo. And then at 8:54,
and there the journeys in the back.
the first news report comes out of ABC from a journalist named Aaron Katursky. And he's the first that tweets that Jeffrey Epstein is dead. Sources tell ABC that Epstein committed suicide at MCC Manhattan. Now, a couple of things weird about this. First off, Aaron Katursky has got a lot of luck. He's one of those journalists that's always there when something happens. He also was one of the first to know that Michael Jackson was dead. Whatever, lucky guy. Now, what's even weirder about that guy is the fact that he works for ABC News. Why? Because ABC News infamously killed the Jeffrey.
So there you have the files were actually that the original, that metadata, the message before was actually dated or time-stamped at 7:44. And the message that she had there, the first message that ever went out, was actually at 7:56. So yeah, this person knew there was something up before. That was the first announcement was that last person that she mentioned. And yeah, so there's a lot of questions there. The next thing is his teeth, which I thought was very interesting. And when I start to look at this, really deep dive into this, there is hardly any pictures of him smiling where he's showing his teeth, which I thought was amazing because I thought I'm going to see more and more pictures. I wanted to really figure it out. And I had a really, really hard time finding pictures of him with his full teeth. So I'll put it on the full screen here. So you can see at the very top, the one tooth is that's the dead Jeffrey Epstein, has his tooth kind of coming out. Where if you see the one below, he actually it's more like a space in between his teeth as opposed to it sticking out. So I thought that was very interesting. So have a look and see if you can find any pictures of him smiling. It's really difficult. It's really, really, truly hard to find, but I thought it was very interesting to see the difference in the teeth there. So, and the next thing I wanted to show you guys was the ear. And if you can look at the arrow there on his ear. So the one on the right is dead Jeffrey Epstein. The one on the left is alive. So you can see that the ear is very much kind of peaked and the other one is kind of more rounded. So I thought that was very interesting as well. You can't really fake an ear. Next one gets really crazy. So this is the inside of his ear. I'll blow this one up. Oh. So, and the nose seemed very different to me. So again, dead Epstein has a very rounded nose. The other Epstein seemed to be very straight. And not only the outside of the ear looks different, but the inside of the ear looks different, which I thought was very interesting. And then we move on to this apparently, and this is hard. I didn't see any timestamps on this, but apparently this was taken from a drone. And he was on Little St. James Island after his death, where they're saying, and I've heard this from a couple people, and I saw a couple other photos of him by drone on the island. Who knows? I didn't see any timestamps. but I just thought it was very interesting that they had these drone photos kind of out of nowhere of him. But the island has since been sold. Another guy bought it. I think he bought it for like 60 million. I think they tried to sell it for 120 million. He ended up getting, well, the state got 60 million for it. And apparently he's the guy that bought it is going to build like a really nice 5-star resort, which I don't know how that's going to do. I don't think there might be a high number of people that just want to go to see the island, but I think there's another half that are just going to be creeped out by it. Me. I would not be going there. I don't care if it's 10-star, I'm not going there. And another thing here is also the way that the autopsy, and this is where it becomes, they talk about it being a murder or a suicide, but here it proves that the autopsy says it could not have been a suicide, the way that hyoid bone was broken, and they said that was more, I'll blow that up, that is more conducive to a murder. So I think if they actually did switch out the bodies, that the person that they switched out for was obviously not going to commit suicide. But if it was someone that they switched out, they would obviously have to have murdered him, put him in the body bag, had someone that looked a lot like Jeffrey Epstein, and then threw him in the bag and sent it out, not having anybody know the wiser. But I also thought this was very interesting. So the Epstein family actually hired this renowned doctor to do a second autopsy, and he had some interesting findings. So have a listen to this.
Epstein's cell after his death, but Jeffrey Epstein isn't in any of these photos. How big an issue is that? Wouldn't they capture the crime scene?
That's a huge issue. The autopsy, especially in suspicious deaths, starts at the crime scene, at the death scene. What was the position of Epstein when he was found by the guards? Who cut him down? Somebody cut him down, supposedly. So moving the body from the scene is a serious deviation from proper.
Anyway, so very interesting. So there you have that highway point, and yeah, like he was saying, that is definitely more conducive with strangulation for sure. The next thing, another theory I had also, and I saw this a lot in my research, is that a lot of pedophiles seem to be going off to Israel. Just so happens. So I found multiple articles. I just kind of found two here, which is very odd. They're both by CBS. But first one, how Jewish American pedophiles hide from justice in Israel. Yeah, many accused Jewish pedophiles in U.S. flee to Israel report. So there's multiple reports saying that there's a lot of pedophiles kind of go off to Israel and they are protected there. So again, I thought that was very, very interesting. So again, guys, let me know your thoughts. I could have kept going and going. There were so many different things, but these were kind of the top highlights that I saw when I was looking to see what the options are, being dead or alive. But I also truly think that this is the strategy here, is to get everybody, if there's a fire over there, everybody's looking over there and they're not looking the other way. So the best scenario they could have had when this all went down is for everybody to argue if it was murder or suicide, because that's the big debate. And no one, not one person, well, I'm sure there are some, but the debate isn't whether he's alive, because people are too busy arguing if it was murder or suicide. But it really distracted from the fact of the third option, that he's still alive. So anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts. Is he dead or alive? Was he murdered or was it suicide? He certainly had a lot of information. I'm going to do a deep dive into a lot of the contacts he had, starting with Clinton. He was at the White House, I think, 16 times when Clinton was president. So I'm just going to start doing deep dives. And there is like a spider web. Once, the tentacles that come off this guy are just amazing. And just see how in-depth he was and immersed in the whole culture, the CIA culture and Mossad and all that. So again, guys, please like, subscribe, share. Was he murdered, suicide, or is he still alive? Let me know. Thanks.